Ian and Jeff at AutoHubShow.com.
We're in Calgary, in a parking lot full of problems. Many of these cars could have defects that threaten their owner's safety. But which cars? And how many drivers know it? We're about to find out.
Hey there. My name's Rosa. We're from Marketplace, from CBC. Have you ever had a recall on your car? No? Do you mind if we check super quick?
Sure. That's my vehicle.
Right there. Okay, so question for you.
Yep.
Have you ever had a recall on your vehicle?
No.
No? Do you mind if I take a quick peek and check?
Sure.
It's estimated 1 in 5 vehicles in Canada has a safety problem that needs fixing, but hasn't been dealt with.
Do you know where your VIN is?
No.
Right here. Do you see where it says 2HH?
Yeah.
We search each car's vehicle identification number, or VIN.
Okay, your VIN, please.
2WF.
745-2HH.
We found the following safety recalls. Oh, you have a couple of them, actually.
Really?
One of them is a passenger airbag inflator may be overpressured. Did you know about those?
No.
No. Does it make you worry about your safety?
Especially the airbag, because it's like, what if we get into a collision that it won't pop out, right?
W, D as in dog, B as in Bob.
Okay, it says one open recall, the glass panel might not meet specifications. Did you know about that one?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, you poor guy. Your car doesn't want to start. Okay, while you're looking, I'll type in the VIN.
Turns out the owner of this Hyundai needs to worry about more than a dead battery.
AM8N. There is an incomplete recall. Safety risk. A short circuit could create a fire risk. This fire risk remains even when the vehicle is parked.
Oh, no, I'm just...
Did you get a notice in the mail from the company to let you know?
A few rows over, this taxi driver is also in for a surprise.
Yep, there is one. Hey, we have some news you might want to know about. So in rare situations, it says, the vehicle may not enter the fail-safe driving mode, and it could, could lose power and stall. Does it worry you?
Yeah, I would.
It's a pretty serious issue with your car.
All these cars have safety problems, according to the very companies that made them, and the drivers don't know it.
I'm just dying to get rid of this car, but I don't know how.
Keisha Taylor of Markham, Ontario had no idea that the used Santa Fe she bought just months ago has gone through multiple recalls, but she knows it now.
I do not feel safe and secure driving this car. Because I've had so many issues, I'm kind of always anxiously anticipating that something else is going to happen with this vehicle.
She's even worried about parking too close to other cars or too close to buildings, and for good reason. The latest recall she has from Hyundai tells her not to. It says her anti-lock brake system could leak and cause an engine fire, even after it's parked.
It just seems unreal.
So if you want to watch more about that piece, it's quite interesting because she has so many recalls on this car that she just wants to get rid of it. Like it was mind-boggling to me, but definitely interesting. It's about I think a 20-minute episode. It's on CBC. You can watch it on YouTube, I think. So good morning. So let's.
Good morning, everybody.
So let's do our sponsors first.
Hi, this is Gail Rubenstein, the founder and CEO of Retail Resilient. Car dealers all over the country love working with us, and let me tell you why. We have 2 product solutions that they absolutely love using. The first product solution is a Facebook and Instagram school where we build out a curriculum for salespeople and managers. We teach them how to create new car offers, used car offers, and get pre-approved offers. We also have a campaign management program where we generate leads for them, and then they do what they do best, they sell cars. So we train their sales staff on how to handle social media leads. Our car dealers typically say to us, I had the highest grossing month in the history of my business. I'm up double in my volume year over year. We even had a client the other day that told me that he was absolutely blessed because he loved our customer service. Everyone at Retail Resilient works remotely from home. I hire only car people from all over the country, so I hire all A players. They're really good at what they do, and we absolutely love helping car dealers. So give us a try, give us a shout. You know, any opportunity, we would love to see if we're a fit to work with you.
Thanks, Gail. A couple books. It was a little bit hard to find a book specifically on recall. So obviously Phil Edmondson's Lemonade Guide for Used Cars and Trucks, Used Car Buying Guide from Consumer Report, and Automotive Technology Principles for Diagnostic and Service. There's a bunch of other books specifically around technology in cars, but those three I thought were a good starting point. And Barry, you need to provide another video at some point.
Hi, this is Barry Jordan from whitegloveperformancegroup.com. I'd like to take a few moments of your time to share how we can make you more profitable. Dealerships all over North America are using our cloud-based power dialing platform, Touchpoint, to manage their outbound sales-generating phone calls. With Touchpoint, your agents can make up to 50 calls an hour. Leave a voicemail, send an email with a link to a video or to your website, all with a click of the mouse. We specialize in empowering your teams to make the calls that make the sales. How can Touchpoint help you increase profit? Check us out, whitegloveperformancegroup.com. That's whitegloveperformancegroup.com.
Thanks, Bert. And this is one quick from John. Whoops.
The road to a sale has never been easier. Introducing the 2-day sales process workshop. Whether it's giving your new employees a head start or re-energizing your sales team, everyone can benefit from this relational approach to sales. Attendees will learn to create an outstanding buying experience by aligning the sales process with the buying process and helping customers through the phases of selection, mental ownership, and commitment. With preset performance standards and accountability criteria, we teach the critical skills and behaviors necessary for long-term success, like making unforgettable first impressions to building lasting relationships that result in repeat and referral business. Through lectures, group discussions, PowerPoint presentations, and helpful Q&A sessions, everyone walks away with the knowledge and tools they need to succeed. Included are detailed workbooks with daily routines and framed certificates of accomplishment. Those we've trained have reported closing ratios up to 53.9% and sales volumes up to 235 units per year. Are you ready to maximize your sales team's potential with our 2-day sales process workshop? Contact Automotive Business Solutions today.
Thank you. Disclaimer, go ahead, Jeff.
Good morning, everybody. We always talk about a little disclaimer beforehand because we know how controversial Stephen Granger can be. And so we just want to say that these the opinions here are those of our guests and not necessarily of ours, although in many cases we do agree with it. So we are not responsible for misuse, reuse, recycled, or other copies made by other people. So thank you for joining us. And of course, today we have the Recall Show, which is a very interesting topic because frankly, recalls are something that isn't new, but been around a long time and probably ignored a lot. And I got quite a kick out of watching that lady with her Hyundai because a friend of mine bought a new Hyundai of that generation, which was 2018, 2017 or whatever, a Santa Fe. And lo and behold, she got into the car one day and drove precisely right into the side of a building, blamed the car, and somehow managed to get Hyundai to buy it back. So I, to this day, wonder if it really was the car's fault, but that's a whole other topic. But so today at our show, without digressing, we have 3 very dynamic guests and people who've been with us before. First of all, we have with us Stephen Granger, who is the aforementioned person we always have a disclaimer about, who is the founder and CEO of Recall Rabbit in that beautiful vacation capital of Austin, Texas. Stephen, you can take a moment and introduce yourself.
Hey, yeah, thank you. And I'm excited about the show and the topic specifically. I am passionate about the automotive space. Been working in retail and selling stuff to car dealers for 18 years now. Started selling Volkswagens and Audis at a little store in Austin, realized it was the hardest job ever, and decided that I still love cars but didn't want to sell them to people, and got into selling stuff to car dealers. So Recall Rabbit, we've been around for about 3 years now, helping dealers solve recall issues in a unique way, using technology in a unique way to help get recalls in and make revenue from it.
Terrific. Thank you so much for being here again. And yeah, I have to tell you, you were probably the catalyst for this recall show. So thank you. Secondly, we have Dave Foy, who is the new Executive Vice President of Training Development at Quantum 5 LLC and the founder of FixOff Mastermind in Boston, Massachusetts area officially. Dave, take a moment to introduce yourself, please.
Hey, great to be here again, guys. Great show you run here. I am, as you said, Dave Foy, 30-plus year vet of the fixed operation space and dealerships. Started as a tech way back in '87, and worked my way up, and now work for Quantum 5, a training company. It's a life change, and has been about a month and a half or so, and lovely to be here again.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you taking the time. And last but definitely not least is Kate Colacelli, who is the Vice President of Marketing for Dealer FX in another vacation capital of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, for those of you south of the border. And those south of the border know it as the home of Drake. But Kate, can you take a moment and say hello?
Great association.
And you have your own plane.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, great to be back. I've been in the automotive space. I always say I hate to date myself, but I think this is my 21st year. Always on the vendor side, primarily in marketing. Fixed ops marketing is kind of my background. So yeah, leading the charge at Dealer FX. We're one of the leading providers of service lane technology for dealers across North America. Everything from online appointment scheduling all the way through the entire process. We're trying to digitize and make the entire service experience more convenient for both customers and service staff. So I'm really excited to talk about recalls, because this is definitely something that we have helped dealers with in the past. We've helped some of our OEM partners in the past on recalls, and it's a good topic. And I personally just had some recalls completed on my own vehicle in the last couple of weeks. So very timely.
For sure. Thank you so much for being here. And Ian, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so a question for all the guests. Thanks very much for taking the time this morning. I think this is Jeff wearing a Toyota dealership, but back in the day, and they got hit with a recall.
You missed it. You got the big deal about recalls.
Oh, sorry. What's the big deal about recalls? Let's start with Kate.
Questions are not off the cuff. They come.
No worries. What's the big deal about recalls? Let's start with Kate.
Big deal about recalls. You know, I found that video really interesting when that lady was so scared of parking her car near anything, but yet she was still driving it. That really, that really was troubling. I think recalls are a huge opportunity for dealers to build retention with their customers. I think they are completely missing out on this way of being that trusted advisor. You know, the first thing we see customers when they have, you know, a negative Google review or something like that is like, I was just in for service. Why didn't they tell me I had a recall? Why do I have to go back? Why didn't they have the parts? If they could get their act together, be organized, that customer experience, becoming that trusted advisor, is a huge win for a service department.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks for that. Dave?
Yeah, from the retail side of it, it's a giant opportunity that is missed by many dealerships. Number one, not many of them actually go out and actively chase the recalls that are available to them. The service that you can get as a result of that car coming in for a recall, a lot of times those are cars that you haven't seen either ever or not recently, and there's a lot of service opportunities there. And another opportunity that dealerships miss is cars that are coming through the department that don't normally get looked at. So lease returns, for example, come into the department. A lot of times they come into the sales side, they get returned, and they go back out and are never looked at by the service department. And sometimes there are some very profitable recalls that now leave your department that you could have had that was free money.
And what percentage do you think of recalls dealers ignore?
I don't even know if I would guess on that percentage, but I would guess it's a very large percentage. I mean, there's so many recalls that are out there, and some of them are ones that dealers don't care whether they get or not. They're not very profitable. So certainly they're not going to chase those. The OEMs will make their half-hearted attempt to notify a customer, but there's a large percentage of recalls that are never touched on vehicles.
Steven? Thanks.
Yeah, I just would piggyback on both of those. That it's interesting when I talk to people who aren't in the auto space, potential investors, advisors. I explain to them how large the problem is, and I give the example of, I remember my first day in college, sitting in an auditorium, some dean talking to us all, and said at one point, "Look to your left, look to your right. One of you isn't going to be here next year." And I use that same thing. Like, if you're driving down the highway, in the United States, it's 1 in 4 cars has a recall. I say, look around. One of those cars probably has a recall. And it could be, to Dave's point, there are some that are minuscule that don't really affect, but it could be the brakes don't work, or there's a problem with the transaxle. So that big Ram truck in front of you could just stop on the middle of the highway, right? So there's serious issues that could potentially affect all of us. And there are a lot of periphery benefits that the other two folks talked about for dealers. I mean, monetarily, you guys keep mentioning the Toyota recall with the gas pedal. There's an even bigger one right now. It's the frame issue that they have on their trucks. It's a $16,000 recall for the dealership. That's what they make from the manufacturer if they get the Toyota in and it needs to replace the frame. I have one dealer that made $150,000 in 8 weeks, pure profit from fixing those. And it was just to Dave's point, it was like going out and searching for it. And that's what our tools help them do, is I find those cars. But it's a huge opportunity, and a huge opportunity for the manufacturers to build awareness. And like I said, there's a lot of periphery things that help dealers when they do these things. It's customer loyalty, but seeing maybe cars they wouldn't see normally. If somebody's got a 10-year-old car, they're probably not going to bring it into the dealership to get the oil change. But if you notify them that they're going to recall, they get in, now they may start engaging with you and getting that 10-year-old car serviced at your dealership instead of Jiffy Lube or Meineke or someplace else, because you've taken that step to show them that you care, right?
100%.
Well, I have to say, so surprise, surprise, I ran a Toyota dealership back when the recall scandal hit. But funny thing, you brought up that frame thing, Stephen. I'll never forget when we had a customer comes in one day with an old Tacoma. And when I say an old Tacoma, so this was 2013, and this was a 2002 Tacoma. He bought it from John's homeland in Nova Scotia, where it had been condemned, or whatever term they want to use, unsaleable. And he bought it from a used car lot. Came out, drove it out here, and we're on the other side of the country, for those other side of the continent, and brought it in because he had a little noise. Our tech happened to be one of those keeners, a Toyota guy, and says, "Wow, did you know the back of his frame, literally the two cross members at the back on either side of the axle were held on by literally about this much metal." They reached out to Toyota. This is a truck that had 380,000 kilometers on it, with 200 and something thousand miles, and was not worthless, but it was still a $5,000-6,000 truck. But that's it. Toyota put a new frame in it, $14,000. A brand new frame. The guy couldn't believe it. And they paid for a rental for him for the 2 weeks it took, because it took a week to get the frame.
Wow.
And it's true, the recall's a big deal. And it's funny because we miss this point about recalls. We say, oh, we do this for safety and for people. No, we're open in business for money. And when that rush started with us with those recalls of the acceleration, we had people lined up trying to get the recalls done. And of course, as Kate mentioned, we couldn't get parts. Finally get the parts, and they're starting to come in. And then we started to leverage those appointments for customer pay and warranty work, people who hadn't been there for years for oil changes. And of course, Toyota people they only came to the service department if there was a problem. Then when we got caught up, we started to use this as a great excuse to call people because business slowed down. So long story short, the question is, which I'm going to hit Stephen with because he's last from the top, why aren't dealers recognizing this increased value of work, reaching out to their customers and selling recall, to touch on what Kate said, before they come in so they can have the parts?
Yeah, I think there's a couple issues that when we reach out to customers about our product that we get pushback, and that kind of fits in that. And one, we're too busy already. We're 2 weeks out. We don't have time, so we don't want to add anything to what we're doing. And what we always come back with is, the one thing we all cannot buy more of is time. And each one of your employees only has so many hours they can work in a day. Why not make that as efficient as possible and work on a recall that makes a lot of money instead of something small that doesn't make the dealership money? I know dealers are great people, but we're not charities. We're all in this to make money. And so that's what parts oftentimes I think there's a lot of also just some old thought process on the fixed ops. And I hate, that's not a good term to use, but like, I know in the past, there just wasn't a lot of money in the recall, right? It was tough. The manufacturers weren't as willing to help and give part, right? And that's changed. I have a couple of dealers that are in dealer 20 groups around the country, around the US, and they show me their numbers from their meetings, and warranty, which this fits under, typically does pay more than customer pay. But there is this conception, and I think it stems from previous iterations of recalls, that they don't make as much money for the dealer. And I think we're seeing a change in that mindset. Instead of looking at the recall as just an endpoint, like you guys have talked about, most of our customers that use our tools, half of the revenue they make when they use our tool is customer pay. It's a vehicle to get that customer in, start a conversation, do what you normally do when a customer comes into the bay, so you can help them fix the things they need fixed. On that Toyota one I was just mentioning, I think they made like $115,000 on the warranty work, and additional $80,000 on customer pay on stuff that they found other than the giant frame issue. But that's typical across the board with our products, that we see. If dealers are engaging customers in the right way, talking about the recall, there is opportunity to be had beyond that and build a relationship that helps. So.
Yeah, there's no question there. And a lot of the time your techs are actually not, while they're in the middle of a job, they can't do something else. They might as well get something to fill in that time on that same job. Kate, your position on this?
Yeah, I think what Stephen said is right. We hear that a lot. Well, I'm too busy. I don't have enough techs. I'm short techs. There's always every excuse on why they don't want to go after recall work. I think part of it has to do with not having a process in place or the tools to do it, or being able to hold people accountable to actually following up on recalls, right? If they don't have any type of, if they haven't invested in some sort of a technology or some sort of a database or some sort of CRM that's going to help manage this for them, those customers are getting lost. And that's just, as a service director, they don't have any way to hold their team accountable, right? If there's no way that they can prove, who's actually reached out to customers, brought them back in, there's no accountability there. So I think that that's probably something that's lacking there. I wonder if they're worried about the perception from the customer. Oh, I have to call them and give them bad news. Do some of the employees maybe not want to reach out to customers to bring them in it's a safety issue. But some of the minor ones, they're going to say, maybe the customer is going to be upset. Oh, I have to inconvenience them. And they're going to be mad that there's recalls on their vehicle, and they're not going to want to buy another vehicle from us again. And I think, like I said earlier, like we got to turn that story around and make them, we want to take care of you. We care about you and your car. We want to make sure it's safe. And, we're your trusted advisor on your vehicle. So we have the answers, we have the solutions, we're here to help you. They need to kind of change that narrative and not be the bearer of bad news and inconvenience, I think.
Well, actually, I think you touched on something very interesting, because maybe it's the dealer actually motivating the managers to motivate the staff to work on selling recalls. And maybe in this particular case, the dealer's making too much money that he or she are not really, got to be careful there, not really that concerned. Would that be the case, or?
Yeah, I think so for sure. I can let the others speak to that, but yeah, I think that they're not looking at it at the revenue potential, right? Like what Stephen was saying, that there's so much other work that's going to be uncovered, especially if it's a 8 or 10-year-old vehicle. It's a great opportunity, but that's all it has to do with, putting in a process, coaching them, and keeping them held accountable to those targets, and making sure that there's actual goals to go after in this area, not just leaving it as, hey, if you have nothing to do, call these people that have a recall.
Yeah, that's very true. And you actually mentioned something else where you said about, I don't think the service advisor is really worrying if that customer is going to buy another car from them, but maybe it's the dealer that says, gee, if I tell them there's a problem with their car. Dave, can you give us your feedback on this, why they're not doing this?
Yeah, the part of it comes down to having the right culture in your store, right? If you have the culture that you are there to take care of your clients, then you want to get those recalls taken care of for them. It's not about giving them bad news. It's, as Kate just said, it's reframing it and making this into good news. Great news. We're here. We're looking out for you. We care about you, and we want to get this back in. We're going to make this as seamless and as painless and frictionless as possible for you to get it in. We're going to make sure we have the parts. So a dealership has the culture that they're taking care of a client. They have a process to make sure that if that customer is coming in, that they have the parts to do the recall. So don't schedule a customer and then have them come in 5-10 days later and say, sorry, we didn't have the parts. Have a process to ensure that the parts are there. And let's look at the other side of this, not necessarily the revenue that's coming into the dealer because of recalls, but the potential revenue that could leave the dealership through liability of not taking care of a recall. So you have a customer that comes in, they have a recall. It's not something anybody is going to make a lot of money on. So an advisor doesn't put it on the repair order, or puts it on the repair order. They don't have parts for it. Instead of rescheduling a customer, God forbid something happens. That is a giant lawsuit with the name now changing on the front of that dealership to whoever it is, Motors, that brought their car in and you didn't do a simple recall. There's liabilities that are giant in today's society that need to be looked at.
Dave, it's funny. Part of where Recall Rabbit came from, I managed for Carfax the relationship with Van Tile, and my point of contact there, he was on the operations side, the fixed op side, and he, to your point, was every day was deathly afraid that was going to happen. He would say to me, I am so afraid that some class action lawyer is going to wake up one day and go, hey, recalls are out there. That's a way I could sue every car dealer on the planet and make money. And so he was like adamant about how do we get recalls fixed at every Van Tile store? Like and that was, like I said, kind of the part of the genesis for us, because at the time there was not a good way for him to figure out internally, how do I find the cars that have recalls, and is the data right, and is there parts available? How do we figure that out? So yeah,
I'm actually surprised that some smart car guy hasn't approached one of those big class action law firms we see on TV all the time and said, look, give me 2% and here's an opportunity. Ian, go ahead, please.
Yeah. In your experience, what is the risk of not making recalls a priority on your customers? Now, obviously, we talked a little bit about that. Maybe we can start with Stephen, since we were talking about that.
Yeah, I think Dave touched on it. I mean, one, it's the liability risk, but also I think you know, we've all kind of touched on just the customer experience piece of it, right? And I think everybody on this call and then probably everybody listening is passionate about the automotive space at some level. And it's already bad enough, the reputation we have. These little things, it's easy. That's the thing that's crazy to me when I get so frustrated. Like, there's a dealer group in the central United States. We talked to them, did an analysis of their inventory. They had 9 stores, and we found I want to say, in their own brands, we found like 400 recalls. That all they had to literally do was take one car from one store to their own other store and fix it. And it was like $17,000 worth of recalls. And they just were like, it's like, well, I think there is a weird block on it. And I think a lot of it is, and Dave could probably speak to this from his experience, is a lot of the management inside car dealers is variable. And so they I don't know how to say they have blinders, but they just don't understand it and don't see value because, you know, in their mind, if I come to a dealer and I say, hey, we can make you an extra $2,000 a month doing our dealer to dealer tool, to them, $2,000 on the variable side is like, right? Like, I spend more than that on coffee, dude, like, or whatever. That their mindset is different than on the fixed op side. And so I think sometimes that's what ends up happening too at a corporate level inside the dealership, is the GM doesn't see a huge value in it. So he's not kind of pushing, or she's not pushing that on the fixed side, even though if the fixed op person wants to do it and buy tools to figure that out, they just don't see the value in it.
And would you agree perhaps that also it's that narrow-minded thinking that says, well, I'm getting in trouble for staff costs, so if I do this, I might have to hire somebody else, which means somebody's going to get mad at me for staff costs.
Yeah, I think there's probably some. I think there, to Dave's point earlier, it's a lot about good philosophy inside a dealership, right? If it's a well-run organization, they, to Kate's point, right, put process in place, it pays for itself. Like, you could literally have one bay that just does recalls, and you would pay for the tech, the bay, the lights in the dealership. Like, it would pay for itself 10x, but it would take process and want to. Yeah.
And maybe somebody might introduce them to a salesman while their car, or a person.
Who would have thought?
While they're working on their car, they could sell a car.
It's possible.
Especially
if
right
some
now,
of these cars are quite old and the recalls haven't been done, right? I mean,
and what's
you got
going
a
on right
20-year-old
now?
car.
Yeah, right now that's not a real opportunity, right? Because of inventory shortages. So, like, it's an opportunity to start thinking about how, with short inventory shortages, how are we going to make money inside the dealership in other ways?
What they do is just sell them a 2-year-old at MSRP for a new one and trade in the 4-year-old car.
Yeah, right.
Dave, what's your thought?
Yeah, there's opportunity everywhere. And there's opportunity for that customer bringing in their recall, even with it being an older car, because of those inventory shortages. You know, maybe this is an extra car and they bring it into the dealership and find out that they can get $5,000 or $6,000 for something they thought wasn't worth much, because dealers are willing to pay through the nose to get inventory now. The recalls that are out there are free money for the dealership, and too often they're looked at as an expense to chase them, to go get them. Going back to Steven's point, when you have off-brand vehicles on a dealership lot, so as of right now, there's nothing that prevents a dealership from selling that vehicle. I think that's probably going to change shortly, but or in the near future. And so from the variable side of it, if there's nothing preventing you from selling that car, then why would you want to tie it up for an additional 3, 4, 5 days where it's not sellable, to send it somewhere to get a recall done that they can let the customer take care of once they pick the car up? And it's missing out on that culture piece where you're able to tell a customer, look, we took care of everything on your car. We brought it to another store, a different brand, to get this recall taken care of so you wouldn't have to be inconvenienced.
I think
It's
there's a
it's
good
a mindset.
motivation for somebody with a Hyundai Santa Fe to not sell it and get the recall done.
Yeah, it's funny, Dave, that you say that. I mean, take a step back and think about that, right? From the consumer experience. And I hear this all the time from dealers where they literally say, well, we don't care. Let the customer fix it after they buy the car. I'm like, think about what you just said. Dave's point, you're like, hi, Mr. Customer. Here's this lovely Hyundai Santa Fe that the engine needs to be replaced, but legally we could sell it to you. Just take it over to Hyundai after you bought it. Like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, it's already on the Carfax and the AutoCheck report. So you've probably seen this online or right. Like that's weird that this car isn't selling because it's got the thing that says it's going to catch on fire, right? Like it's just a weird mindset.
Not a big deal.
Of a simple, right? And there are a lot of dealers that have remote repairs, right? Like Dave on his Fixed Op Mastermind call has somebody on there that has a Ford shop. They have like 6 or 7 vans that they go out and remotely fix. Like you don't have to bring the customer in. There's smart ways to figure out how to get that car fixed that dealers can think about. So,
Kate, what's your thought?
It's interesting. I was just going to weigh in real quick. It's interesting as we go through this and we listen about these dealers that aren't interested. Well, that's not a big repair or whatever the case may be. I guarantee they'll get interested when somebody starts talking about the Minute Lubes being able to do recalls. When they start taking it to the after shops and they're fully licensed and trained and they can do these recalls, the dealers will be all up in arms and they'll all be mad and upset and everything like that, but they'll have done it to themselves just like they did before. And I don't think it's going there anytime soon, because I think you need factory trained people, but the money is sitting there. And it's such a nice call to make to a customer. Hey, Mr. Customer, we noticed you got this problem with your vehicle. We've got parts in the system. There's no charge to you. Come on in. We'll get it all tidied up. Whether you upsell them or don't upsell them, they got a fantastic story to tell at the barbecue on the weekend about how their dealer called them, got them all fixed up, blah, blah. Didn't even know I had a problem, but they fixed it and all this other stuff. And I find it funny that there's these dealers that enough of them that there's a show about it that are just sitting there not taking this money in. So I find it very fascinating. So maybe that's what you got to do, Stephen, is just tell them that you heard there was legislation coming that Mr. Lube was going to be able to start doing recalls.
Kate? Thanks, Barry.
Yeah, I think, obviously there's, the financial implications and possibly liability issues, but, going back to customer experience, I think is really important. When you think about, everybody's time is more valuable. They don't want to be inconvenienced going back to a dealership multiple times to have to get something fixed. From the service perspective, our maintenance intervals are longer. You're seeing customers less. Like you said, the mobile technicians, there's a lot of different ways that you can service your car now. So your face time with an advisor is so limited now, and you need to make the most of it and build that relationship so that you're going to have that long-term loyalty. And this is just another way for them to see it as a great opportunity for me to connect with my customer and get them back in the door. So that, I was saying at the top of the show how, I recently did that, right? I went online to my car dealership. I booked online because, hey, I sell online schedulers and I wanted to, support the process. I went online, booked my appointment. The next day I got a phone call from the service department and said, yeah, we see you're coming in on Thursday. There's 3 recalls on your vehicle. We want to get them all done while you're here. So we're going to give you a loaner and, bring your car in at 8. We'll see you at 4. No problem. Here's your car. I was on my way. It was, they did that extra step and they proactively looked ahead at their appointments, saw what was required, ordered in the parts, and there was no inconvenience in my day.
How did you feel about the fact that you had a recall as a consumer? Did it scare you?
No, there was 3.
Right.
It was like, okay, well, I didn't know that. Great. I'm glad you took care of it. I mean, I was there, I needed my, regular maintenance and it was done. So it's not a big deal. I mean, things happen. Things are not, going to be built perfect 100% of the time. And I think customers need to know that, hey, things change, things evolve, and there's a better way that we could have built this vehicle, or there's something that, needs some extra attention, and we're going to make sure it's taken care of for you. it doesn't have to be the scare tactic, your car's about to blow up, hurry up and get in there. It's just show the concern for the customer, take care of them, be respectful of their time. And I think that's the opportunity for dealers for long-term retention.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was on a call that I do on Fridays on used cars, and one of the dealers on the call had a really interesting thing where basically what he would do is he lists on their website all the work that they did on that car to get it ready for sale. Wouldn't it be great if it all said, oh, and by the way, we also did these 3 recalls that were outstanding that, the guy who sold it probably didn't do, but, we figured in addition to regular safety, we should make sure that the car actually operates properly based on manufacturer specs. So I thought that was a really interesting way to look at reconditioning, but more importantly, to use it as a sales and marketing tool for the dealer, because customers right now are looking for used cars in multiple stores. They're going in to buy a specific used car. So how do you stand out if everyone's got that similar car, right? So
yeah, the other piece of that, Ian, is you touched on something interesting. One of our tools connects dealers to help fix recalls on used inventory, and one of the things we talked about is it helps with recon costs, right? If you have a Honda on a Ford lot and the Honda dealer is going to fix the recall, if it's under warranty, they're going to look and fix everything else that they can, which cuts down on your recon costs at your dealership. And to your point, makes it a better car for the consumer to buy. That's the other thing.
yeah, and as long as the culture in the store and the salesman says, "Oh, here, by the way, this is what we did in recon. We're not just charging you $1,500. This is what we actually did, and this is what we also did that maybe some of the other dealers in the market didn't do, and here's why we did it." Right?
I think
Go ahead, Kate.
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to say, and one of the, when we're talking about reaching out to customers and letting them know about recalls, I think that's part of the problem as well, is how is this information even getting to the customer, right? Like I had to book an appointment in order to find out there was 3 recalls on my vehicle. How manufacturers I know are challenged being able to reach customers, where a vehicle changes hands, they lose that capability. We're putting this onus on the dealers to actually touch that end buyer, that end consumer. And, that's a lot of responsibility on there. They should probably be taking it a little bit more seriously, because the manufacturer is not going to be the catch-all for every recall that's out there. And I think that process of getting it to consumers is a big challenge.
An example of that, actually, if I can interject, is you reminded me of something. My daughter has a Jeep, and she keeps getting these recall notices. And I'm a car guy. And I say, hey, you got to get this in. I noticed the other day a recall notice comes and it's in the garbage and it isn't even opened. So everybody seems to be relying on the manufacturer to send out a mail, or dealers are sending out an email, or there's no effort being made to actually interact with the customer. And her recall is an airbag recall. Now they probably don't have parts, but I'm saying, come on now, her sister and I have been in 3 accidents in 5 years, and thank God for airbags. So sorry to cut you off there, Stephen.
No, I was going to say what's interesting too, to Kate's point, is there are a couple manufacturers that we have dealers of that provide recall data. And that's one of the things that we talk with our customer about. And they're like, half the times the data is not correct from the manufacturer because they're using public data about ownership and it's not correct information. So it's like a double whammy for that particular brand. And there are several brands that do this, where they offer it from a corporate OEM down to the dealership. So they reach out to the customer. They're like, we haven't owned that car for years, or the contact information's not correct. And when they try and update it, it doesn't work. So there is a big disconnect, I think, between the OEM and the dealership level about getting this resolved. And I think that also, to the earlier point, is that also is part of the reason why I think some dealers are hesitant to really focus on recalls, because maybe they have in the past, they've worked with the OEM. When vendors like us call, and there's several vendors in the recall space that'll reach out, they've already got it in their brain, like, look, we've tried this before, we've done something with the OEM, it didn't work, we just made customers mad, we're not going to do something again. So I think there is a big disconnect and opportunity for OEMs to do better, use technology better, right? Not a mailer to your point, Jeff, how many other things do we all get in the mail? And we're like, I remember those things like non-automotive where you get like I remember you'd open it up and it'd be like $1.50 check because there was some thing you bought that there's some class action. How many of those I've thrown away over my life that I finally opened one? I was like, wait, these were checks, right? The same kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. You know, it's we miss a great point with all of this. Dave, did you have something you wanted to mention there, or you just popped up on my screen? Nope.
Nope.
Okay, so we'll move right on. So we've actually touched on this quite a bit, but really, truly, what is the biggest hurdle in getting dealers to do this stuff? You know, we've mentioned liability, we've mentioned incremental profit, but it still doesn't happen. If it did happen, Stephen would be out of work. You know, and we'd have to figure out a different topic of the show. So Dave, I'm going to ask you this. What is the biggest hurdle in getting recalls to the top of mind of dealers?
I'll go back to store culture. It needs to be something that is important to taking care of a client to a dealership. Yes, there's recalls out there that provide a lot of money to a dealership to do. But we're not there just to do that, right? Yes, we are there to make money. Obviously, they're profit-making machines. But there's a lot of dealerships that do oil changes and don't make any money on them just to have the customer there to be able to take care of other things for them. And they need to take care of recalls exactly the same way. Take care of your customer in the long term, that retention, that lifetime value of that customer rises as you take care of the customer and you keep the retention cycle going where the customer comes back to you to purchase a car. And you need to get the culture in your store to be such that a customer no longer calls to make an appointment and says, I need to get an oil change on my car. They need to call and say, I need to get my car in to see Jeff Polo. He takes care of my car. Right. And that's where the culture of the store needs to change. And if Jeff's not there on Tuesday, then I'm not bringing my car on Tuesday. And if you take care of recalls in the same way, then your customers will feel that, they'll understand that, and they'll continue to come back to you.
Jeff, we got a question here from the audience. Go ahead. You want me to do it?
Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Software electronics recalls are about twice the numbers as other systems. What can dealers do to capture this massive wave? Laptops versus wrenches, tech-savvy staff versus master technicians. These can be dangerous recalls. So what can dealers do to be not only aware of these, but understand that, yeah, like the amount of computers in a car, like there's a lot. How do you fix that?
Dave, we'll continue with you.
Yeah, it's a great question, and obviously, as cars become more and more electronic and electrical, this becomes more and more of an issue for dealerships. Training is a big thing, and understanding, having a process in your dealership to know which technicians can do which recalls is just going to become more and more important as time goes on. And again, it starts at appointment time with the appointment being scheduled properly for the person that's going to be able to do the vehicle. If you only have one EV person that's trained in your dealership and they're on vacation and you schedule an EV recall, you have an unhappy customer.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I have to say that comment, thank you, Sean, much appreciate the comment and question. Biggest shock that anybody ever has is when you see a NASCAR car come into the pits with a problem and it's not running, and out comes a guy carrying a laptop. And, you know, they're opening up the hood, they're turning wrenches, but the laptop guy's working the hardest. So Kate, let's get your opinion on this hurdle and getting this to the top of mind, and also Sean's comment.
Yeah, I think, you know, it really becomes down to, like, as Dave was saying, you know, it's focus, and it's what, you know, the culture of the dealership is. And I think it's the same with other things like, you know, equity mining and going after, you know, trying to upsell on the service drive. These are all different. They're all important initiatives, and they're all different initiatives, but it all takes focus. And I find, you know, in my experience with a lot of dealers, they almost you need to prove it to believe it, right? They want to see wait a minute here, let me try it. If I get the uptake, yeah, then this is now going to become a priority for us and we'll put the process in place. But sometimes they have to see it to believe it. And, hopefully there's some great solutions out there that can help them kind of see the light and look at this as a big opportunity for both revenue and for retention.
Well, you mentioned too, of course, you're in that helping software side of the business, as of course, Stephen is, and many, many people are. But we've had this discussion on different topics before. You can have all the solutions in the world, but if your people aren't focused on that, what's the point?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, going back to the recalls and Sean's question, that's where you can take advantage of some of these tools. Sort the recalls by importance, by how critical they are. Use your database, segment your customers, that the information is all there. Use the tools, go after some of these really important recalls. Yeah, like there's obviously other ones that are much smaller and not as significant to the end consumer, but take care of the big ones, because that's where the customer is actually going to appreciate you looking out for their safety and for the investment in their vehicle.
Yeah. Stephen, I'll get your point in this, but actually just before I say that, to turn it over to you, Dave made an interesting comment. We reach out for oil changes. Now, how many people come in for oil changes and nobody checks the car for a recall? Stephen?
A lot.
And they're losing money on the oil change.
Yeah. No, and I think that just goes back full circle to Dave's point about culture. And I think changing a mindset of what the recall is it's an opportunity to build engagement with the customer, not a revenue generator or a scare tactic or whatever. It's changing that. And to Kate's point, I would say our best customers, there's another piece and kind of ties into Sean's point. Our best customers have a person that is a technologist in either the store or the group that helps with the data, because it's Dave's job inside the dealership as the fixed ops manager or the service director is not to manage the data, it's to manage the shop and make sure they're being profitable. And I think this is an opportunity in dealers to start looking at data and finding people that can that in the right way. And we work, to Kate's point, and this ties into Sean's question, Honda has a recall on Odysseys, and it has to do with the infotainment system and the dashboard. They're connected, and there is a problem with the infotainment center. So the center console, when that goes bad, it shuts off the dash. So that means you can't tell the speed, anything, right? All shuts off. Each Honda store gets this machine, it's the size of a desk, to test. If you have to take the dash out to do it, if you accidentally do something wrong, it wipes the data from the dash. So now you've got an odometer that is no longer valid, right?
Ooh,
like there are
huge, listen to that one.
huge issues if, to Dave's point, the tech isn't the right person who has been specifically trained on this $25,000 unit of technology that has to do this right. And so you can only have a certain number of people that can do that inside a store, right? And that repair costs they make $700 doing that, because you have to fix everything, right? And do that test if it has to be repaired. And so utilizing that data to make sure that you're reaching out to those people, to Kate's point, right? So you think about the holistic nature of that process, right? It's a Honda Odyssey. Who is the customer that's probably driving a Honda Odyssey? It's a family person that's got little kids. You reach out to them as the trusted advisor and say, hey, there is this recall that affects your Honda Odyssey. We care about you. We want to make sure you're safe. It's going to take X amount of time. We'll give you a loan, right? Like, think about that whole circle. You're going to have a customer for life, because they're going to be like, they cared about my kids. And oh, by the way, that customer's not going to go, I don't really care about that recall. They're going to come in and get the minimum $700. It could be $1,500. So for that text time, you've just made $700 you know, it's like an 80% profit margin. Like it's, the numbers are crazy, but it's not just about the money. It's about the holistic nature of what you've created with that customer, because now they're going to go on Facebook. They're going to go on Instagram. They're going to say, what a great experience. I think one of you guys said they're going to be at the barbecue, right? Like thinking about recall is just one little piece of that bigger picture and utilizing it as a tool, right? And this is the other thing that I tell investors is no matter how good Recall Rabbit is, Recall Masters, all the other recall companies out there, we're never going to work our way out of a job. Because if you think about it, cars are manufactured more efficiently than they ever have been in the past 120 years of automobiles. And every day I have Google alerts set up, hundreds of thousands of recalls happen. They get populated, right? So it's been a change in the way cars are manufactured and all the technology that's in it, but just the R&D length and time has been pushed out. I had one dealer explain it to me because I asked, like, why are there so many recalls? It seems like, is it because we're more litigious? And they were like, well, some of that, but some of it is the way the cars are manufactured now. That in the past, you know, they would start planning for a car and it'd be 8 years before it went to market. And so they would do a lot of the testing in that time. Well, that life cycle has been shortened. And so all that testing is now, unfortunately, been put on people like Dave. It's post-sale, and they have to fix the problems that the OEM would have found, but they need to push life cycles faster, right? So it's just a change in the way manufacturing's happened that's causing all this. And it's an opportunity for dealers and OEMs to build a better relationship with customers.
Well, you know,
I'll get on the soapbox for an hour and talk about recalls. Just give me a chance.
We have a question here from Angie. Jeff?
So what are your thoughts regarding voluntary recalls, and should dealers focus on these types of recalls as well? Stephen?
I would say yes. And it just goes back to that, you know, it's building brand. Like I remember an early experience. I mentioned I worked at a Volkswagen Audi store. I'm a huge Audi Volkswagen person. I've owned a bunch in my lifetime. And I vividly remember, and you guys have been in the industry a while, you probably remember this. There was this weird thing with the Volkswagen and Audi automatic window hold, like the thing that held the glass. It was like every one of them was bad. They never, like, I didn't know that, but every time a customer came into our store, they fixed it without even telling, like they would tell. And I vividly remember bringing my Audi TT in, they bringing it out to me and going, hey, by the way, I took it in for the oil. And they're like, by the way, there was this recall, we fixed it for you. And I remember thinking like, oh, that's cool. I didn't even have to do any, right? And it was just that little thing that literally I wasn't in the industry at that point. Like they obviously made money on it, but I was like, oh, they cared about me. Not now, I'd probably be a little less, I'd be more cynical about it, but it did make me feel exactly to Kate and Dave's point about like the environment and culture, that you felt like, oh, these guys care about me. I'll bring my car back here.
Yeah. Kate?
Yeah, I would just add on to that, you know, it's exactly the same as the premise. You know, you want to build that relationship and that trust factor. And it's the same thing that, you know, when a tech does an inspection on a vehicle, you want to show the customer the things that are good and the things that are bad, not just always focus on the negative. So if you have that opportunity to talk to them about a voluntary recall, say, you know, this isn't critical, it's not urgent, but we'd like to take care of it for you while you're here. You know, it's a courtesy thing, and I think, you know, it's a great way to build relationships.
Dave, same thing?
Yeah, so many of those, the dealers have to walk a fine line, because those are given to the dealerships from the OEMs with, if the problem is manifesting itself, right? So as an example, I'll jump off for 1 second. Stephen, that's window regulators, and that is still a problem with 30 years later. But so Ford F-Series and some other Fords have a problem with door locks freezing in climates like mine, not in yours, Stephen. But so you'll have customers that'll come in the middle of June and mention that, and depending on what the culture of your store is, they may go, well, but it has to be happening for us to do anything about it. that's just changing the question that you ask, right? You can stay within your manufacturer's guidelines and still ask the questions to get to the point that you need to be able to put that concern down on a repair order and take care of that for a customer. So it's just a shift in how you have to look at those to still walk within the guidelines of your OEM, but also take care of your clients.
But the question is, though, Dave, this is something very interesting. These dealers will sell a winterizing special. Somebody pulls in with their F-150 for a winterizing special, and they're sitting there going, I can't say anything because the customer has to ask her that. And then they could say to them, when literally in there in the service drive, by the way, have you experienced the sticking lock in the winter?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I have. Great, I can do it.
Right.
If that, it's kind of a weird position that you have to ask about it, but I guess that falls under a campaign instead of a recall.
Yeah, exactly. They're just you can call them whatever you wish. they are an issue that should be taken care of for a client, and you just have to have that client's best interest in mind, and you can get to the point that you need to so that you can actually repair that for them.
It's actually an advisor getting themselves up to speed when they book the car in, when they can check so they know what to mention. We're almost up today, folks. We try to keep it within the 1 hour. Any final questions from comments from our guests?
No, I just would say thank you guys for addressing this. I think, as you can tell, the conversation, it's a topic that doesn't get touched on enough, that I think is an important way to build loyalty and a good measure between consumers and the auto space. It's a win. As we tell people, it's a win-win-win, right? Like if a dealer fixes the car that's on a used lot, the dealer that fixed it makes money. The dealer that's got it for sale has a better car to sell, and the consumer wins. It's one of the small pieces in our little world that we actually do good, and we all benefit. So we should be doing more of it.
When I was preparing our call script, I partner with a guy in a small little used car lot, and him and I had an argument the other day about the benefit to him in this lot for actually contacting dealers. You know, we get the Carfax and there's all these recalls in this 2010 F350, and there's a bit of a problem in the engine. And I said to him, let's get it to the dealer for the recalls. They'll probably even pick it up, and you might discover something. Well, guess what? There was a recall. They picked it up and they discovered the problem in the engine. We didn't have to pay a guy to do it. And then there's liability. So Kate or Dave, any other comments?
I think, like you said, it was great conversation. And I think, the thing that dealers can remember is that there are, like Steven's tools, there's things out there that can help them with this, right? It doesn't have to be such a daunting task. It's a process, it needs focus, but there's things out there that can help them, and taking care of the customer at the end of the day has got to be number one.
Yeah, absolutely. Training your employees to take care of clients. It always works in the way that you take care of a client and then you make money. It doesn't work the other way. You make money and then try to take care of a client. You lose retention in the middle, and retention is the world in service and fixed ops. Really appreciate being on today, guys.
Thanks very much. Have yourself a great week.
Thank you all, everybody. Have a great, safe week. And who knows, we're opening up. The world's going crazy, especially in Texas. All the best. Thanks. Everybody.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.